NIDA stopped shipping cannabis for medical patient response studies. They moved towards harm reduction and drug abuse studies only. And that has changed. And then Emory, who was the sponsor, the institutional support for this program, a subsequent law came out in Congress called the Drug-Free Workplace Act, and that was spoken about during the hearings on the Georgia Commission on Medical Cannabis, that the institutional support was barred effectively by this act of Congress that takes away potential future funding for anybody that involved with cannabinoid research. My ministry is to facilitate the provision of this compound from Full Spectrum Omega to be able to brought into this this program that the state is mandated to provide. And then I also wanted to make another
Reverend Davis,
okay, thank you.
We need to wrap that up. We've got
okay.
some others, but if you'll just sum it up for us real quickly.
Okay, that was one program, and then the other program is the Georgia Commission on Medical Cannabis identified a ratio of cannabinoids that's effective in healing as well, and calls for further investigation. And so I implore the committee to please fund this state mandate and provide for these board members, please, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha. Next,
Scott LaFranco. And then Gail Morantz.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. My name is Scott LaFranco. I am the General Counsel and Director of Government Affairs for the Georgia Dental Association. I come before you today to speak on behalf of two issues that we would request your favorable consideration on. But before I get going, I wanted to thank the committee for all of its hard work last year in helping us get a dental Medicaid fee increase. With your assistance in the House, we were able to get the funding that we needed. We hadn't seen a fee increase for our dental Medicaid providers, I think, since 2002, so it had been quite a long time. The other issue was the Rural Student Loan Repayment Program, and we thank y'all for y'all's support on that. This year, we again hope to seek your favorable consideration on a rate increase for the dental Medicaid providers. Taking an example from our good friends, the pediatricians, we're hoping that we can also secure an incremental increase for our dental Medicaid providers. The projections that we've put together, we have here and we'll be able to present to the committee members. The other issue that we're here before you today is to request state funding for the GDA's Donated Dental Services Program. If you're a non-pregnant adult in the state of Georgia, the only procedure that dental Medicaid will typically cover is an emergency extraction. This Donated Dental Services Program is our solution to address the gaps in current adult Medicaid coverage. It works by having our GDA member dentists provide the network of dentists for the program. The patients have to be elderly or medically fragile. They can't have insurance, so there's technically low-income folks, but the program is throughout the state of Georgia because all our members are throughout the state of Georgia. The statewide coordinator would screen the patients and then make sure that that patient gets assigned to a dentist in the area. The dentist provides the dental care as well as the labs absolutely free of charge to the patient. Again, we would just request your favorable consideration on both of those aspects, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Scott. No questions.
Thank you, sir.
Gail Morant. That's not us. Okay. That exhausts the list that I have. Is there anyone here who wanted to speak that maybe I've overlooked your name or you didn't get on the list? If there is, we'd like to hear from you. We got 1 minute left before 2 o'clock. But let me thank all of those that came and testified, and all of you that attended for your interest in the health in this state. We appreciate that. And to our committee members, thank you all for being here, and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
There is a sign-up sheet over here by the podium if anybody wants to sign up to speak.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, good afternoon. It's good to see all of you. I know many of you were here yesterday as well and are frequently here in the Capitol. Let's start with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today to ask that you help us to open our ears and our hearts to listen to the concerns of your faithful Georgians. We ask that you soften our hearts and you help Georgia to grow in every way that's possible to make some of these needs not the unmet, but the met needs. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, so this is all public comment. It's your day. It's your day to talk. And if anybody didn't sign up, just come let us know. If you're, if as the meeting goes on, you feel like you weren't going to talk, but maybe you want to talk, that is okay. So we will convene today's House Human Resources Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee and get started. Our first speaker is Janet Adams with the Atlanta Fulton Family Connection. And when you come up, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself too, so that we know more. Don't assume that we know it. Just tell us about it. And just so that you'll know, next will be Sherry Cody with Twin Cedars.
My name is Janet Adams. I am the coordinator for Atlanta Fulton Family Connection. I am a native Georgian. I actually was born and bred in South Fulton, and I was actually matriculated in Fulton County School System. I have a history of 30 years of public health experience. I am committed to my state, to my people of the state, and that is how I started working at Georgia Family Connection Partnership as a coordinator for one of their collaboratives. I'm here today on behalf of those 159 county collaboratives that comprise Georgia Family Connections Network. I'm so proud to represent this network and that it is the only one of this kind in this country. Last year, you heard from my colleague, Edwina Turner. She is the Stewart County representative who brought you a rural perspective. I work in Metro Atlanta, and I'll be speaking to you about Atlanta Fulton Family Connection and how we do things in a metro area. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the subcommittee for this opportunity to come before you today and talk about the work that Georgia Family Connection Partnership is doing with their partners in their collaboratives. And thank you for continuing to fund our work that we're doing, the critical work that we're doing each and every day. Georgia Family Connection exists to craft local solutions for the issues that are faced by our families and children that are in Georgia. We have truly a unique vantage point in that we are in the communities so we can witness what they're going through, those families that are in need. And we can also connect those issues that we find with statewide initiative with the support of Georgia Family Connection Partnership. I'd like to share some of the specific things that we're doing in our collaborative work in Fulton County as well as across the state in rural areas. There are priorities that we base our work on, which are indicators of child well-being. We're hopeful that our children will be healthy, that they'll be prepared for school, and that they will succeed when they get there. We also want to see that our families are stable, self-sufficient, and productive, vibrant, and living in thriving communities. To date, I would like to highlight some of the things that we just started with our Early Childhood Health and Education Initiative. We have started in-school tutoring and mentoring programs where we are taking volunteers, families, fathers, mothers lives are being changed because we're actually placing them within the school system to read to children who are struggling with reading. I would also like to highlight First Footsteps. This is a program that we have started in Fulton County with our WIC partners. We are doing resources with new moms, new fathers, new parents who need support on how to take care of their child, to take care of their families. We bring all our collaborative partners together, and we provide them resources, whether it's just food to eat, diapers for their children, nutrition education, and a shoulder to lean on if they're just not sure how to take care of their baby. And we also emphasize the need that they're the first teacher that their child is going to have. And one of the things that I would like to say, why am I here? I always look at why I'm someplace to present. I can still remember sitting at my mother's foot and her teaching me how to read. So I know the things that we are doing in our community's work because I've experienced them myself. Other things that we're doing within our communities throughout Georgia: healthy cooking classes within the communities as well as in the schools, summer reading programs to make sure our children are retaining what they learned during the year, book drives and distributions to make sure that our children have the resources they need to be able to succeed in their educational institutions. Each of you have in front of you some data about the families and children that you represent in your district. I would invite you to reach out to your local coordinators so that you can speak with them about the initiatives that they are starting in their communities. I'm also here, on behalf of my county and my colleagues across the state to respectfully request that you consider restoring our funding level back to $50,000. We are currently at $48,500. Getting back to $50,000 would require additional $1,500. And I know you say that's not much, but some of those programs that I just listed to you could really use that minimal funding to continue. In Fulton and most counties, there is a lack of resources. Our network has shown that we can leverage our dollars, and we can do work on behalf of those families that are in need with these types of, with the funding that we have, plus that additional $1,500. It is true that Fulton is especially in need of support with the amount of need that we have. I often speak of it as being the elephant and how we're going to meet the needs of everyone that we are supposed to be supporting. It takes one bite at a time. And as a result of that, I implore you and encourage you to be able to give the funding that we are requesting. All of us in Georgia Family Connection Network share the belief that growth and prosperity of this state is deeply rooted in our families, individual moms, individual children, and they make up our community, and they are what make our community great. And at this time, if you have any questions, I'll be grateful to answer those.
Are there any questions from the committee? And I apologize that we're such a small committee at the moment. There may be some others coming in. There's several meetings going on, so everybody's kind of juggling, presenting bills and presiding in other capacities too as well. I just want to thank you. I'm well aware of Family Connection and what it does in Rome, where I'm from. I think all of us know, and I think it's been a great privilege to help build this money back, to realize we were helping each and every area of our state with it. So we'll continue to look at it and discuss it.
I would like to thank you all for the continued support that you've given us.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Sherry Cody with Twin Cedars, and then next will be Carl Lehman with Chalcott.
Good afternoon. I'm Sherry Cody, the Executive Director of Twin Cedars Youth and Family Services. We provide residential care for adolescent foster care youth in LaGrange, Columbus, and Macon. Most of our youth require the maximum watchful oversight. I'm grateful that the governor recognized the need for private providers to have a rate increase and included 2.5% in his budget. I'm here today to ask you to consider increasing that percentage. Our per diem was set in 2007. In the ensuing 11 years, we've received 2 increases totaling 4.5%, while inflation was at 21%. Stagnant funding has resulted in providers having to use their charitable giving dollars to buy things like pillows and toothpaste and clothes and haircuts, instead of using those charitable dollars to fund the capital projects and major repairs that are needed. For example, buying new vans, since many of the vans that we own have 200,000 miles on them and are over 10 years old. Things like a fresh coat of paint, replacing carpet that's worn out, replacing servers that have reached the end of life for our computer system are all being deferred in order that our charitable giving dollars can be used for operations. Staff taking care of Georgia's most vulnerable children are receiving less in pay than employees at the new Hobby Lobby around the corner from our facility. And at a time when DFACS is requesting more places to place children, programs are closing. We've had 3 programs closed for funding issues in our organization. A per diem that covers 85% of cost is just not sustainable. So please help us help the children. One of the things that I would like to respectfully request is that the 7% request that DFACS made in their proposed budget be included in the governor's budget. That would be 4.5% more than right now. Thank you.
Let me ask, are there any questions? I would like to know, I know you said, so do you have 3 facilities, LaGrange, Columbus, and Macon? Is that what you were saying? Or do you just
We actually have 9 residential facilities,
9,
but they're
okay.
in those 3 communities, yes,
in
ma'am.
those 3? And approximately how many children can you serve at one time? I know
We have about, between our foster homes and our residential campuses, we have about 180 children a night who sleep on a Twin Cedars pillow.
Well, thank you for all that you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Carl, and then next will be Juanita. Judge Stedman, excuse me.
Hi, I'm Carl Lehman. I'm the president of Chalcott, but I'm also speaking on behalf of Together Georgia as the board chair. And one way to look at this is if I look at the reimbursement that DFACS provided for Childkind's foster care program for children with medical complexity, if I look at what was contracted for us in 2007 versus today in inflation-adjusted dollars, we're actually receiving about $250,000 less today than we were 11 years ago. And the only analogy I can think of, you know, and my dad was a butcher, and I kind of think along simple terms, and the thing that kind of came to mind is like, Together Georgia, the providers, GATS, we're like a truck, a semi truck. And every year, DFACS comes along with all this stuff that they need moved, you know, and every year the trailer we got to pull gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But each year, you know, our truck, we got less gas to work with, we've had to defer maintenance, and it just gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And, you know, we really, really appreciate a 2.5% rate increase. But apologize for this analogy, but that truck needs work, and that truck needs maintenance, and Childkind needs greater support to serve these children. And I agree with Sherry Cody from Twin Cedars that the DFACS proposed a 7% rate increase for providers. There was a logic and research behind it as to why that number was chosen. And my hope and prayer is that the legislature would consider either going back to that original DFACS proposal. And thank you very much for your consideration. And I appreciate you all very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from our members? Thank you, and congratulations again on that recent honor you received. Well deserved. Next up after Judge Stedman will be Maureen Kelly. Also.
Thank you. I'm Juanita Stedman, the Executive Director of Together Georgia. It's truly my honor and privilege to be here today, and really that's for two reasons. One, I get to represent amazing folks like Carl and Sherry and so many other providers, over 300 providers in the state of Georgia who are providing services to children as child welfare providers. The other, and the one that really sticks with me, and most of you I've met with and you've heard me say this, is that as a juvenile court judge for 16 years, those are the providers that took the most difficult children that came in front of me. And I heard someone with the department say today in a meeting I was in, some of our kids are higher need. I assure you that of these providers, all of their kids are higher needs. And these providers are all over the state of Georgia. And not only are they all over the state of Georgia, many of them have children that they're serving that are all over the state of Georgia, because that's what happens and that's how it works. We have an amazing, I think, public-private partnership with the Department of Family and Children's Services. And I think that was recognized when they asked for a 7% increase, because they knew that that's what we needed, and that's what, as I say, was deserved, but what was really needed for these providers to serve what I believe are the most vulnerable children in the state of Georgia. And those are the children that these providers take, and just like everybody else who's in child welfare, they take them, they make sure that they go to high school, they make sure that they graduate, they go to VOTEC school, and they do the thing that we want for every child in Georgia. And I know that of everyone sitting here today, because I've met you and I know where your heart is. What we want for every child in Georgia is to be able to have those things that every other child has, to be able to become a tax-paying citizen and not be a child that is on the treadmill to go to prison, and not be the child that's on the treadmill to become homeless or the treadmill to become both. So we're asking that you increase two things. One, the rate increase back to what the Department of Family and Children's Services asked for, and the other, that the per diem for these private foster parents through these private providers is increased to the amount that, as Mary Margaret Oliver said yesterday, was promised to them, and they took that promise and supported other things being done because they felt that that was going to be done this year. 61% of the children that the Department of Family and Children's Services has in care are served by the private providers. In some counties, your more metropolitan counties, it might be 80%. But if you took the round number of 13,000 children who are in the care of the Department of Family and Children's Services, that means that 7,930 of them are being provided each and every day by this amazing group of people that I get to represent. So I appreciate you, I appreciate your hearts, because I think everybody up here has a servant heart. I know that, I've met you enough to know that. And I appreciate the hard work you have in front of you, but I truly hope that this becomes a priority, because I think it's a needed priority for us to serve those children that otherwise have a very difficult time being served in our state. Thank you. Any questions? Good. Helen told me you might have some hard ones, so I think I'm getting off easy, so thank
maybe
you.
Maybe our hard questioners are not here. That's good.
That's good. I'll count that as a blessing, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So Maureen Kelly, and then I believe it's Lynn Reeves.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Honorable Chair and members of the committee. I am Maureen Kelly, and I'm the Legislative Chair for the Georgia Council on Aging. You know us as the group that is charged with making recommendations to the governor, the state departments, and to this esteemed body, as well as the organization that convenes COAGE, an 800-member coalition throughout the state that gathers together in extensive conversations throughout the summer to identify the priorities for the following year. And we mention this because it's important to remember that every one of the members of COAGE actually make these recommendations from their local knowledge in their local communities throughout the state of what they see as unmet needs. COAGE priorities this year are a request for $10 million for non-Medicaid home and community-based services, and I'll say HCBS, and $4 million for the Aging and Disability Resource Connection, the ADRCs in Georgia. We know by 2040, 1 Georgian in 5 will be age 60 and older, and we are witnessing this shift in real time. The explosive growth is already straining our current systems designed to help people stay in their homes, where they are familiar with their surroundings and seem to thrive better. Right now, there's a waiting list of more than 12,000 individuals who need HCBS services, and on average, we know that these services help delay nursing home placements by 51 months. That's a true savings to Georgia. These services include home-delivered meals, respite care, the adult daycare, the things that you know, home modification that might help someone stay home. But we also know that the longer a person stays at home with support, the more it saves Georgia taxpayer dollars. Because without additional funding, we know the waiting list gets longer, their health declines, they then need more skilled nurse in nursing home care, and quite frankly, in some cases, they die. As we heard in testimony yesterday, the Commissioner of Public Health mentioned how aging is affecting all members of our society. She, I think, was speaking of autism, people with autism at that time. But we know that these are truly investments to better position Georgia to respond to the shifting demographic before us. Funding for ADRCs is particularly important because these centers provide the right information at the right time to older adults, persons with disabilities, and their caregivers to help them navigate that whole complex system of services. There are 12 area agencies on aging doing this and 9 centers for independent living. They all have staff that's highly trained to answer the calls and assess the individual needs and resources and provide the information and referrals and advise on eligibility. Now, I want you to remember 3 things about the ADRC. Number 1, in fiscal year 2017, these 21 sites actually serve more than 95,000 clients. And that's including 72,000 older adults and 23,000 individuals with disabilities, both including physical, developmental, and behavioral disabilities. Number 2, over 80% of the calls are answered and satisfied with information to referrals for private pay services. The increase, and lastly, the increase of the older adult population, coupled with the fact that we've lost 2 federal grants supporting ADRCs, has created a funding crisis for them, and worsening even still in fiscal year 2016 to 2017, when the ADRC funding decreased by 9%. Funding of $4 million would strengthen the ADRC statewide network by adding capacity and labor and technology to meet the growing demand and really providing crucial information at the right time. I'd like for Lynn Reeves to join me here at the podium to tell you a story from one of the local area agencies on aging, one of those 21 centers I mentioned. She's the Area Agency on Aging Director of the Northwest Georgia AAA in Rome. Lynn?
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. The Northwest Georgia Area Agency on Aging is responsible for the services in 15 counties. That is Bartow, Catoosa, Chattooga, Dade, Fannin, Floyd, Gilmer, Gordon, Harrelson, Murray, Paulding, Pickens, Polk, Walker, and Whitfield. Over the last 12 months, we received almost just short of 13,000 calls to our ADRC toll-free hotline. That does not include the direct line into our offices or the referrals we receive out in the community. And as Maureen shared, a large number of these calls are satisfied with information and referrals to private pay options. As you can imagine, that many calls, and even if we go further into screening someone into services, these calls can be very long and they can be complicated. And as Maureen stated, it does require a lot of knowledge base for a counselor to be on that call to correctly serve someone. Calls fluctuate throughout the year, and I say that because right now we're experiencing a high volume of calls. Usually when caregivers have visited during the holidays, we see a large number of calls because they've seen the situation their loved one is in, and they will contact us for help with services in the home. I reviewed the calls over the last 30 days alone. There are a lot of calls, these calls within our service area, but also calls throughout the state and throughout the country. We had Baltimore, Miami, Hawaii, Louisiana, Alabama, just everywhere across the state where maybe an older adult lives in our area, but their family member lives across the country, and they're looking for someone to help them with their family. Because of this volume of calls, a lot of our staff have had to answer calls, myself included. So I just want to share a story as I've been answering the calls within the last few weeks of a daughter who called. Her father is 86 years old. He's homebound. He lives still in his home. He is struggling with dementia, and she's in the workforce. So she called us. She's in a crisis state. She needs to be at work. Her husband needs to be at work, but she's not sure what to do with Dad. So we worked with her. We have to ask a lot of questions about their situation, but we're able to turn this over to our ADRC counselors who were able to offer this family private pay resources to get him meals into his home, homemaker services to run errands for him or help with some of his housework. We won't, as Maureen said, we won't people to continue to age in place where they want to be in their community. But we'll also be there for them if they do need some other placement options. We'll be there to help them with that too. I'll just finish with that family by saying not only did we help the father, but we were there to serve as assistants to the caregivers, the family, and helping them with services too. Just being there to keep people in their communities, that's what we want to do. That's our mission.
Thank you, Lynn. I might like to ask the committee if you've ever had a call from a constituent who really needed help with their mom or dad or a loved one, and remind all of us that it's those ADRCs to whom you're referred to help that constituent navigate those troubled waters. So it is the ADRCs to whom your constituents will get that help they need with the right information to help their loved ones. Thank you for your time and for your dedication to all Georgians, especially vulnerable older adults. And do you have any questions?
I don't see any.
Thank you.
But I just want to thank y'all because I'm well aware, and thank you for telling the story of Rome too, as well. I know you do a very good job there. Thank you. Okay, so next is Becky Paris from Calhoun, and the one after Becky will be Andrew Agatston.
Ready?
I think we're ready.
All right,
We
Madam
are.
Chair,
Thank you.
gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rebecca Paris, Becky Paris. I am an attorney in Gordon County, Georgia, and I am what is called a SAG, which is a truly terrible acronym, which stands for Special Assistant Attorney Generals. We represent the Department of Family, the Division of Family and Children's Services in all 159 counties in the state. We are answerable to the Department of Law, the Attorney General's Office, and we are funded through the Division of Family and Children Services. I want to thank you so much for the consideration that you have given us the last couple of years. Until 2 years ago, the last increase in our hourly rate had been in 2002. And 2 years ago, we received a rate increase of $4 an hour. Last year, we received an increase of $1 an hour, and we do appreciate your consideration of us. What we do is that we handle all matters in juvenile court for the Division of Family and Children's Services. We provide advice to them. We staff the cases. We do a lot of training with the case managers as well. We must attend all meetings where parents' attorneys are present. And over the last couple of years, the caseload for the department for juvenile court has increased tremendously since the 2014 changes in the juvenile code. The number of hearings that we handle has at least doubled. We are also now responsible for handling all of the child abuse registry appeals that went into place last year. That it's been another huge increase in our caseload. We are basically on call at all times for the department. As you can imagine, children don't always come into care between 9 and 5 during the day, and so we are on call for the department all of the time. We deal with their hearings. The statutory time limits in juvenile court are very, very short. The first 4 hearings in a case happen within the first 40 days of a case, and trials, the full-blown trial where all the evidence must be presented and we make our case to the court, happens just 10 days after a child has been taken into care. This is difficult because it is if there's a criminal investigation, this is at the very beginning of the criminal investigation. We don't have reports. We're basically doing everything at the very beginning of the case with very complicated cases, including physical abuse, where we must prove the case through medical evidence, child molestation as well. It's a very specialized area of law. The people that practice tend to do this as a very specialized area of law. Most of the SAGs, it used to be that it was something you did very much as a part-time thing. You had a regular general practice, or maybe you did criminal work or domestic work, and this was a portion of your practice. For most SAGs now, it is all that they do. The caseload has increased to where you really can't do anything else while you hold this position. All of the hourly rate that we receive includes everything that we must use for our office overhead and expenses as well. My joke about it is we are special assistant attorney generals. What is special is that we are not state employees but independent contractors. So everything that we do, our medical insurance, vacation, retirement, everything that we do comes out of that hourly rate. All of our staff that are not paralegals come out of that rate as well. One thing that we have all noticed, the people who do what I do, at our conferences, you look out across the room and everybody is beginning to look like I look. We're older, we're grayer. There are very, very few young people coming into this role, and that is something that we are very concerned about, because we feel that what we do is important. The children, they cannot be protected without attorneys that know what they're doing in this very specialized area of law, and it is very difficult to compete with other areas given our current rate. Your handout has a comparison of other SAGs across the state. The DNR, DOT, Board of Regents, Pardons and Paroles, and us, we are the lowest paid of all SAGs in the state. We are currently at $57.50 an hour. The average rate for all SAGs combined is $142.50. So that will give you some idea of where we are in the range. Given that, some people have asked me, why do you do this? Why do you want to do this job? For me, it is the personal satisfaction that comes from knowing that something I do can make a difference. That's something that you don't always feel in the practice of law, but that is something that very much is in place for me as a DFAC SAG. I have shared with you a letter. This is a letter that I keep on the wall next to my desk because it does remind me of why I do what I do. It was written by an 8-year-old girl. She and her younger sister, who was 6, were molested by their mother, their father, and their mother's boyfriend, all 3 together. After they were taken into care, her mother had another child. This is the letter that she wrote to the judge when she knew that the hearing was coming up on the baby, her new little sister. So I wanted to share that to you, share that with you so that you could understand why we do what we do. And what we want so much is for there to be people of talent and of compassion that will want to get into this profession. And I thank you very much for your time today, and I'll answer any questions if anybody has any.
Representative Henson. Just a minute, we're going to get your mic up. Okay. There we go. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I ended up working on this issue last year.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know we have different groups of SAGs, and there was another group I worked with. Who were they with? Child support SAGs last year. Does this cover the child support SAGs?
No, it does not.
Why are we not taking all the SAGs that are earning in the same $57 range that you are and asking for a raise for all of them? Because, I mean, you need a raise and you deserve a raise. And, I mean, you're still underpaid at 77.
Right.
But I don't want to, why is each group coming in rather asking?
Well, as I said,
I mean, they're coming in under the same
Right.
division, because they're under
right.
defects. So, I mean, but we're talking about defects, we're not talking about the comparison to DNR or DOT.
Yes, I understand, but we don't do the same thing. As I said, we are all independent contractors, so I can't, you know, I'm speaking for my group. I can't speak for them as to why, you know, they might not be here. I know they have not necessarily sought a raise before. And what we do is very different. The child support SAGs are provided with offices in the counties that they serve. They have a full staff, all of their office supplies, all of that is done. The majority of their initial paperwork is done by the staff that are funded through the state. They are not, and what they do is they go to court. The amount of work they do is much less as far as volume goes than our group. And as I said, I can't speak to, you know, why they're not here to talk about that, but we're not state employees, so we are not one group. And that's probably why it's treated differently. We're independent contractors.
Yes, my next question is, DNR, DOT, Regions, Pardons and Parole, are they state employees?
No. Same as us.
So the child support SAGs are the only ones that are state employees?
No, they're not state employees either. They are contract attorneys, but they are provided offices that are separate. We all operate out of our own offices. That's one of the main differences.
How many are in your group?
There are about 55, roughly 50 of us. We serve all 159 counties.
And they're roughly 50
Mhm.
members.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Representative Epps. Oh, we have one
Oh,
more
no,
question.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a statement and thank you for what you do. You know, I've worked with enough, on different committees with enough agencies and department to know that in some areas we pay extremely high hourly rates for outside and independent attorneys. And you know, I was tempted one time to try to introduce a bill that said all state agencies had to pay a hourly rate equivalent to a SAG attorney if we're going to use outside attorneys, or get your rates up compensant with that. But maybe somebody else besides us needs to read this letter from that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You protect the most vulnerable that we have.
We appreciate that.
I join Representative Epps and the entire committee with gratitude. I think we all know that you are reimbursed at a much less level, and I thank you for continuing to bring it forward and making sure we hear that over and over again. Appreciate it. Okay, so next is Andrew, I believe, and after that, Shelley Simmons.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Hello. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Andrew Agatston, and I'm the CEO and General Counsel of the Children's Advocacy Centers of Georgia. And I'll be using this handout in front of you to talk a little bit about CAC Georgia, which is the state network that provides technical assistance and training to our currently 47 children's advocacy centers in the state of Georgia. By the end of 2018, we expect there will be either 49 or 50, which is the second most in the country. As many of you know, children's advocacy centers provide a multitude of services to children who allege abuse in the state of Georgia. And the abuse, primarily we respond to sexual abuse, but we also respond to physical abuse, neglect, exploitation, and we also provide services for children who witness violent crime. And I'm here before you all for your consideration for an increase of funding that would equate to $30,000 for each of the centers across the state of Georgia. And the reason for that is that, well, I actually began working for CACs way back in 1998 when my wife was the chair of the Safe Path Children's Advocacy Center in Marietta, and she voluntold me to provide legal services to Safe Path, and that was a life changer. That was a game changer for me because I learned what CACs did, and it is the U.S. Department of Justice model for responding to allegations of abuse across the country. And we in Georgia are so fortunate to have incredible centers and committed professionals who respond to them, and we're really one of the biggest in the country. And for the past 4 years, as the one pager in front of you shows, we've literally doubled our services in terms of individual case plans to children from just over 8,000 in 2013 to 16,500 in 2016. And actually the numbers just came in for 2017. We've provided 17,500 individual case plans to children across Georgia. And these services will include a critical forensic interview of these children where our trained experts will interview the child about their allegations of abuse, and that then is used for prosecution, as well as our multidisciplinary team members, the SAGs, in the DFACS cases. But we also provide forensic medical examinations. We provide trauma-focused therapy for these children. We provide safety plans for these children, and just a variety of other services. But as we've grown in Georgia, and the back of your one-pager shows our service map, we have had funding that's been stable and stagnant for at least 4 years, and we haven't been before the subcommittee in more than 10 years asking for an increase in funding. So we know how to stretch a dollar, but we also know that with the increase in terms of what we have to do and our responsibilities, we're seeking this additional funding. So you'll see in our output in the middle of that one pager, it shows that we've done 9,300 forensic interviews, which is one of our primary services. That number went up in 2017 to more than 10,000. Our therapy services in 2016 in the middle, again, of that one pager, shows 5,219 therapy services. We're up to 9,000 in 2017. And the individual case plans, again, has gone over 1,000. Now, in the bottom, it talks about the center funding, which has remained the same while the services are doubled. But you see in the bullet points, as we've grown over these past 4 years, we've gone from 41 children's advocacy centers to, again, we'll probably hit 50 this year, but certainly 49 because of this consistent funding. The amount that each of our centers is getting less and less as the demand is going up. I guess the silver lining on that is that, if there is one, is that it's great that our centers are, even though they're getting less amounts because they get the same share if they're full member centers, it shows that most of our centers are becoming full member centers, meaning they've passed all of the 10 standards necessary to be accredited in the state of Georgia. So we've got some seriously great centers, but in effect, they're getting less funding because of the increase of CACs with the consistency of what the funding has been. In terms of the individual case plans, the second bullet, I'll just point out on that one, it just shows that in 2013, our children's advocacy centers received $172 for each individual case plan, but due to the increased services provided in 2016, it was reduced to $86 per case plan. A little bit about CACs in Georgia. It is, I know I'm certainly biased because I've got such a respect for our CACs, but it literally is one of the two best networks in the country. And we have, although we have 49 centers coming on board, we have about the third most in the country that are accredited nationally by the National Children's Alliance. We'll have 33 at the end of this year. So I think we're doing valuable work, and to be super fair, in conjunction with our multidisciplinary team partners, which are the prosecutors who are on these cases, our caseworkers. We're multidisciplinary team members with our caseworkers and DFACs, our doctors, our therapists, our schools. It's really a village that we're part of, and we're honored to be part of that. And that's what Georgia really has been all about. The last thing I'd like to leave you with on this document is that we polled our children's advocacy centers. We surveyed them prior to kind of collecting our thoughts about coming forward with this ask for $30,000, and we put a lot of thought into it because we understand there's certainly organizations that are worthy of these funds. And so we wanted to be respectful of that. So we sampled our CACs, and we asked them, look, if you were able to get an extra $30,000 into CAB or Rome or what have you, what would you do with it? None of them said, well, we're going to increase salaries for staff, for the directors and things like that. What they said was, and it's on the right side of your page, on the front page, we need to add more therapy services for trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. We need to increase our medical services. We need to increase victim advocacy. Importantly, we need to get better state-of-the-art forensic interview equipment, because those interviews are videotaped and then they're put in front of the SAGs or the prosecutors in the criminal cases, and they've got to be played for the jury, and they've got to be in great form with technology. And then the last one is outreach services. You know, the statistics are staggering. 1 in 10 boys and girls before the age of 18 across the country, and certainly in Georgia, will be sexually abused before they reach the age of 18. We also know that a like amount of those individuals don't report. We don't hear about them. They don't report until adulthood, and even in adulthood, it's far into adulthood. So with these outreach services, we think we have, and that's why we're called children advocacy centers, we have a huge role to play to getting the word out that abuse and neglect and exploitation, these horrible things that happen to children, happen in every corner of the state of Georgia. So that's something that they're certainly interested in. So with that, I just wanted to, again, thank you all for the opportunity. If you have any questions, I'm delighted to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Chairman Apps.
No. And thank you for the presentation. I was just curious as to the count is in white.
Yes, sir.
It has no, is that?
Right, and that's correct. And so the coverage map shows the coverage in the state of Georgia. So the white areas are where we don't currently have a specific children's advocacy center serving that area. So you see right there, I know you're interested in the middle there. We are always interested in putting CACs in those areas that aren't covered. Now, that's not to say they don't get the services. So an outside CAC may do a forensic interview, for example, in Baldwin or Putnam. But those are the areas that we don't currently have a CAC. We are interested for real in having one in Milledgeville. And so we've talked to Director Pryor, her Chief of Staff, Jeff Lukich, about going in there and trying to create a stakeholder situation in that area.
So that's the heart of my district.
Yes,
that's
sir.
The reason I'm concerned.
I knew you'd be interested, yes. And I'm glad to follow up with you. Love to talk to you about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would ask, over in Pope, do they come into Floyd County to use services? Or
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear
in
you.
Pope County, particularly when I look right there, I think they access, there's some commitment partnership being made with
That
Floyd
is
right now,
exactly,
too,
that is
right?
correct.
Right.
And that's
Working on
currently,
that one.
yeah, and we've had discussions with Joe in Rome, as well as Tracy and Carrollton.
Good.
Right, absolutely. And I expect that's going to be different color.
I hope so.
Yes,
because
yes,
those
ma'am.
are children with needs as
Yes,
well.
ma'am.
Right there, particularly. That one should be one to help maybe decrease that a little bit. So, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
Your
My pleasure.
meaningful work.
I appreciate
you are
that. Thank you.
doing. Okay, so next, Shelley. And Stan, are y'all coming together? Kind of. Okay, so after Shelley and where if you can, we can do microphones right there if you want to. That'll be good. And then Melanie McNeil will be up next as well after. Let's see, is it that one? Did he go? Did he go back one more? Maybe. Maybe back. Let's see. Do you punch the red button and let's see if that works. Let's see. Okay, let's see. We got you. I don't know. Let me. I'll make.
Hello?
Oops, now I'll go down just a little. Sorry. Okay. Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll adjust it if it's not loud enough.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and to the committee. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Shelley Simmons. I'm the Executive Director for the statewide Independent Living Council, also known as the SILC. And I'm here today. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a transplant, and I've been in Georgia now for nearly 12 years. And I started out as a board chair for the SILC, later became the assistant director, and at the retirement of former director, I took her place 2 years ago. And so it has been my pleasure to serve and work with the SILC office and also with the legislature of the state of Georgia. I'm here to respectfully ask to help us expand the Centers for Independent Living. I know that when I became disabled, I really didn't know where I was going to go or what services I was going to seek out. And it was when I was referred to a Center for Independent Living that I actually regained my independence, my enthusiasm, and my, I guess, just respect for myself to be able to get up and get out and do something for myself. And it was from the Centers for Independent Living that I gained that empowerment. And so that's why I'm here today to ask for $1 million to be added to the Vocational Rehabilitation Agency's budget to help expand the Centers for Independent Living. Right now, Georgia has 9 centers that are located throughout the state, but there's also a huge hole in the middle and southern part of our state. Actually, 59 counties are not being served right now. And that's nearly 1 million people with disabilities that do not have access to a Center for Independent Living. What's unique about the Centers for Independent Living is that they are staffed by individuals with disabilities. And some of the core services that they provide are information and referral, independent living training, systems advocacy training, and peer support, and transition. That's youth transition for a child that's transitioning to adulthood, and also for transitioning out of nursing homes. But also the Centers for Independent Living also help divert individuals from going into nursing homes. We provide one-on-one services, and I think that's really the core of that Centers for Independent Living, is their peer-to-peer mentoring. What better way, other than to see somebody with a disability, helping and assisting, becoming a mentor to somebody else who has a disability. You have that personal connection with that individual. And that was something that I received. It was a peer mentor from the Centers for Independent Living. We really want to fill in this huge hole that we have. We've been trying to get this accomplished for quite some time. And I believe that if you were able to come and visit with one of our Centers for Independent Living, you would see the tremendous work that they actually do. It's a usually small staff of people that does great work on very little. So we want to, again, respectfully ask for $1 million. That $1 million will provide 6 satellite offices to serve the unserved and underserved counties of our state. And with that, we believe that we will have a tremendous effect on the people within those areas. The centers constantly get calls from areas that are not being served, Valdosta, Ben Hill area. But if you go And the only thing that we can do is refer them out to other agencies. But I honestly believe that the small agencies have the best effect. And so we hope that you will really take into consideration in granting our request. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? I don't see any. Thank you. You know you're an inspiration. Stan, did you wish to speak also? Okay, thank you. Okay, Melanie McNeil, followed by Dawn Alford. Get that off or not?
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I get to sort of bring us all together in a way as we're talking about people with long-term care needs. So we've heard from the area agencies on aging about the Aging and Disability Resource Connection, and also from the Centers for Independent Living. What the Long-Term Care Ombudsman program does is advocate for residents who live in long-term care facilities. So sometimes we get calls from people who are saying, my mom needs to go to the nursing home. And we'll say, well, maybe not. Why don't you call the Aging and Disability Resource Connection first? Sometimes we get calls from folks who say, my mom has received home and community-based services, but now she actually needs to go into a facility. And so while the Aging and Disability Network has used that 51 months of home and community-based services to help someone stay in the community longer, they're sicker and frailer when they go to the nursing home. And so it's really important for us to have advocates who can be there for residents who have even less ability to advocate for themselves. We have more than 70,000 long-term care residents in the state. We have about 41 ombudsman representatives who are not state employees. We contract with nonprofit agencies who provide those services. About half our funding comes from the federal government and about half comes from the state. And what we're asking for is $550,000. That would allow us to add 7 ombudsman representatives. We have 6 agencies that cover the 6 areas of the state. So what we would add is a position in Gwinnett County, 3 folks that cover the metro area, 1 for the Bibb County area, the middle part of the state, 1 that covers Muskogee County, and 1 for DeKalb County. In addition, we're asking for part of that money would provide for a little bit more expense money, gas money. Our folks don't travel and stay overnight to serve residents, but I was talking with one of our ombudsmen yesterday. She travels 186 miles to her furthest facility. So, you know, it takes a lot of gas. So we're asking for a little bit more money for expenses, a little for training, and a little for the state office to improve the salaries for the state office staff. What I've provided to you is also a way to do it over a few years. If you can't give a full appropriation this year for $550,000, we have a couple of different ways to do it. If you did it over 1 year, if you did it over 2 years, or if you did it over 3 years, we would just appreciate your consideration of adding that funding in for the Ombudsman program. And where it would go, we're part of the Department of Human Services, and so in the tracking document, we're in section 28, and we're in the Elder Abuse Investigations and Prevention part of the budget. Part of the reason for that, our Ombudsman representatives go out to all the facilities and do abuse reporting and prevention training, along with resident rights training, as well as advocating on behalf of residents, some of whom have fairly ordinary day-to-day kind of problems, and some of whom have pretty serious needs, and we're there to be their advocate. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration for our $550,000 request.
Are there any questions from the committee? You've done a good job of educating us all and
Thank you.
also of working. Thank you so much for the work you do, Melanie. Okay, Dawn Alford. Let's see if we can. Thank you, Michelle, for helping. Thank you. Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for this opportunity to provide some brief public comment. My name is Dawn Alford, and while I'm of course speaking on behalf of the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, you all know I'm also speaking to you as someone who understands very well the importance of having appropriate supports to be able to live and work in the community. The Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities is the state's leader in advancing public policy on behalf of individuals with developmental disabilities and their families, and of course our mission is to promote public policy that creates an integrated life so that people with developmental disabilities, their families, their friends and neighbors, and all who support them can live, learn, work, and play in Georgia's communities. I'm here today to discuss with you our FY19 budget asks. Now, as you already know and have heard Commissioner Fitzgerald testify, the waiting list for DD waivers stands right at 8,658 people, and that's as of October of 2017. Further, thanks to you all here at the Georgia General Assembly, you helped us to get budget language added to the state fiscal year 18 budget that instructed the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities to create a multi-year plan to essentially address that waiting list. While I hope that if you've not done so already that you take time to read this report, what I just want to let you know is that our budget asks this year, there's 2 of them, but they're a package and they're in line with the year 1 objectives of that plan from DBHDD. So I'm going to refer you now to the 1-pager that Hannah handed out to you, and on the back of it specifically, you can look at the chart from that report that we're highlighting. The first ask is to fund a total of 600 now and comp waiver slots. That's in line with their year 1 objective, 600 DD waivers. Currently, the governor has recommended 125 now and comp waiver slots at a cost of $3.1 million to be included in the budget. So what we're asking is for you to add an additional 475 DD waivers at a cost of $11.9 million, so that essentially that gets us at that total of 600 as recommended by DBHDD's plan. The second ask is for state-funded supported employment services. You'll also notice in DBHDD's plan that they identify an objective of referring 480 individuals annually to GVRA for supported employment services. Now, by federal law, VR funding is designed to be time limited, and during this time, an individual is working to attain and retain that work. But also, you know that for some individuals, especially for our stakeholders in the DD community and those with intellectual disability, retaining and thriving in employment requires sometimes longer-term employment supports. And so it's with that in mind that these additional funds are needed to provide supported employment to these individuals. So what this ask is that you add $4.8 million in state funds to DBHDD's budget for the fiscal year 19 to achieve the goal of supporting approximately 480 Georgians with developmental disabilities to go to work in their communities. And just to clarify, these 480 individuals are individuals who are not currently being served by a waiver, and this would be state-funded dollars we're asking for. So at this time, I would be more than happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions from the committee? Let us do your microphone just a minute. Can you do?
How much additional dollars does this all come to?
So for the DD waivers, it would be 11.9 million additional dollars beyond what the governor already put in the budget for the DD waivers, and then for the supported employment, it's 4.8 million. You're welcome.
Any other questions for anyone? I don't see any. Thank you so much for the work that you do. You two are quite an inspiration. It's always good to see you here. Okay. Next up is Gail Morantz, and then we'll have Amy Hughes. Would you rather sit down here and use one of those, or do you want to come up? Okay, great, great. There is one little step there. Barbara, why don't you just see if she needs any? Can you see if she just needs any help with that step? Just give me your hand. Thank you. Very good, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gail Morantz, and I'm here on behalf of my daughter, Pam Lindy, who has developmental disabilities. I wanted to thank you, Madam Chair Katie Dempsey, and everybody on the committee for allowing me to talk. Around 2004, my daughter was online or on the telephone with friends and seemed to have met a boy who she talked to for several months, quite a few months on the phone, who lived in North Georgia. Actually, it was a whole family who actually lured her into thinking that this boy was in love with her. And anyway, he came to visit us one time. We thought it was fine, and then she went up there, and it turned out to be a chicken farm. And I couldn't get her back. She was actually there for 6 months. I called every agency and everybody in the world to try to get my daughter back, and I couldn't. I spent $10,000 trying to become a guardian of her, and anyway, I finally got her back after 6 months, and I had to find a place that was safe for her to live in. And she is now in independent living facility, and I've been private pay. All this time, since 2004. We did apply for a waiver at that time, so it's been 14 years that we have been on the waiver list. Initially, I had $10,000 of my own money that we paid for, put towards the rent. And then she got a lump sum from Social Security that we applied for. We used that, to pay for the rent. And ever since the money ran out, I had to sell my house. And I've sold my house. I've used all the equity in my house. I had no place to live after that. So my daughter, another daughter, bought a little house for me to live in. And it's only for a very short period of time, because when her kids go to college, she had to sell the house. So I have 1 year, and 1 year left, and I will be homeless. I have just a few months left of money left to pay Pam's rent. And after that, she'll be homeless, but she won't be able to live with me because I'll be probably living in my car. I mean, I really don't know where I'm going to go in a year. And so we're in dire situation. I understand there's, 9,000 people who are on the list. I don't know if everybody has a dire case like mine, who have gone through every single penny that they own to support their daughter. I would do anything for my daughter. I was told that the only way that she would get money is if I was dead. That's what I was told. I would have to die first. And our situation is close to that. I mean, it's a terrible situation. And I don't think that the committee means for everybody to go through everything that they own to support somebody like this. So if you could fund the waivers, I would appreciate it. I really would. Because we just don't know what else to do. And I think that she is very happy there. She's safe there. It's a very regimental, way that she lives. They have rules. No one can get to her, and she's happy, and she needs to stay there. So anything that you can do to help us, we would appreciate it.
Well, thank you for sharing your heartfelt story. Where is she?
She's at Just People in Roswell.
Just People. And,
right.
And
it's
and you are
independent living apartments.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and I still paid for all of her clothing, everything, but I'm retired. I live completely on Social Security now. I have gone through every cent, all my money from my 401k, every cent that I had in supporting her. So I don't know if you've heard other cases that have been close to this or similar, but we're near the end. We're at the end. We're not near it. We're at the end. So we need help.
Well, and I appreciate that. In light of that, you're also talking for others who need it. I value that from you. Where do you live in the Roswell area as well?
Yes, I'm living in a little house in Woodstock.
Mm-hmm. Right now. So you're close to her, right? Fairly close to her at that point. Well, are you, on this, I think this is something we probably need to talk about a little bit. I don't know if you can stick around. We have just a couple of more speakers. If you have time to stay, let's just
okay.
talk. Okay.
Thank you.
So Amy Hughes and then Keith Parker.
Thanks.
Oh, let's see, Keith.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman. I'm Amy Hughes with Hughes Public Affairs, and I'm from Savannah, Georgia, and I'm here today to speak to you on behalf of the Matthew Reardon Center for Autism. I want to thank y'all so much for all of the support that the General Assembly has given, both appropriations-wise and public policy-wise, for all of the children with autism in our state. We've got about 2,000 kids down in the 4-county coastal empire area where we live who are diagnosed along the autism or with the autism spectrum disorder. And the Matthew Reardon Center has been working with the state since 2006. We have a contract with DBHDD to provide services to the children in our region. And specifically, the way that contract is set up, 2/3 of the funding goes for educational services. So we operate the only accredited full-time school for children with autism in Southeast Georgia, which is called the Advance Academy. And at the Advance Academy, what they do is they take the children who have, with autism, who've been unsuccessful in the public school setting, and then they bring them in and they provide specialized, individualized instruction. And so the goal is to return the children to the public schools, but equipped to be there and ready to learn. And they focus on the communication skills and the life skills that these children need, not just to be successful in school, but to be successful in life. Additionally, the other third of the contract with DBHDD has to do with advocacy and outreach, and we serve children in families in over 38 counties, actually, in Southeast Georgia. And what that looks like is specialized advocacy on behalf of the kids, going with them and their families back to meet with the schools to help them get back into their schools and make sure that they have the level of services they need. It looks like training for caregivers, training for families, training for teachers. We offer conferences and things like that as well to help people understand the world that children with autism live in and how we can all work together to make sure that they live up to their potential in life. And so our request is actually we have a long wait list at the Matthew Reardon Center for Autism, specifically for our Advance Academy of children who are not being successful in the public schools. And so we'd like to, we're actually planning on moving to a new location in the fall in order to expand our capacity to add 18 additional slots for children, so to bring up the total number of children that are enrolled in the Advanced Academy to 40 children. And then, so we'd like to request an appropriation increase of $250,000, which would cover those 18 slots, as well as would include an additional $27,000 for our advocacy and outreach services to make sure that we can truly reach out into our region, Liberty County, Bryan County, Effingham County, and all of our surrounding counties in the Coastal Empire. You've got in front of you a letter from the delegation. Down there you'll see Representative Petrie, it's on his letterhead, and Representative Stevens and all the other legislators from that area, including Representative Al Williams, because we serve so many children who are with military families, and they have some special challenges because they get transferred around the country and they need some extra help with their children as well. I would like to invite you, if you're in Savannah, to come visit the Matthew Reardon Center. We'd love to have you and love to show you what we do. And also invite you to our big conference, which they'll have about 400 teachers and family members and all there to learn about how to reach our kids with autism. Unfortunately, it's on March 3rd, so I think we might be up here. But anyway, that's when it's going on. If there's any questions, I'm glad to answer them. But thank you very much for all that you do. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee? I don't see any. Thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for trying to grow this program as well. Dawn Randall. Oops.
If you don't mind, I'm going to go before Keith because he has a story he wants to share. And Keith is our new director of Goodwill North Georgia, and I'm so excited to have him with us today. As you all know, you have done an incredible job in bringing work to folks with disabilities across Georgia. And each year, the Georgia Association for Training, Employment, and Supports asks for you to fully fund the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. As you know, you have made an investment last year of $500,000. Back in 2016, it was $900,000. But we still aren't fully funded, and we're leaving a lot of money on the table for Voc Rehab. The stats that I gave before you on both our fact sheet and our ask talk about the impact that 13 community rehab providers in this state every year. We are up to $140 million direct impact in all of your communities. That's 2,995 people employed, and 42% of those are people with disabilities. Last year, the CRPs placed 1,085 folks, or helped them. I can't say they placed them. They facilitated their training and they supported them in private sector jobs. That's in over all of our counties of Georgia. And on top of that, they raise almost $32 million from community contributions and donations. So I wanted to bring that to your attention and tell you we're still about $8.2 million short of the full investment. As Sean Casey, Executive Director Casey, shared with you the other day, we are still short of that gap. This year, as you know, we're going to be moving out that $1.6 million from Roosevelt Warren Springs to the hospital. So that money moves out of folk rehab. If we do that, then it's not available potential $110. So that money's gone. It can't be moved back into VR. So we need to plug that gap. And $1 million of that 1.6, if we could find $1 million, that would draw down $5 million and serve over 1,400 people across Georgia. And I know a lot of you are asking about waiting lists and all of that difficulty that these folks have shared their stories, and they're very real. How can we chip away at that by helping someone with employment and really getting them into their communities in the ways that they find most beneficial? This would go a long way. I want to now let Keith share his information with you because I know that he has got to be off and running. So let me step aside so Keith can share his story.
Thank you, Dawn, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I joined Goodwill of North Georgia a little more than 3 months ago as the president and CEO, and by far the most impressive thing about the organization is the types of folks who we help. Goodwill of North Georgia is the largest local nonprofit in the state with just under 3,000 employees and an economic impact in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But our stories are most important when we can get personal and individual about them. There's a gentleman by the name of Adam Banta who went through our workforce development program. And Adam has a disability, but also has a very passionate interest in work. So through our program, he was able to find gainful employment, full-time employment with AutoZone. Today, he's off of public assistance and a very strong contributor to our society as a whole. Because of stories like Adam and because of the groups like Gates, we fully support this request for additional funding. While Goodwill of North Georgia only receives about 1% of our overall budget from the state, our impact is pretty monumental, and the types of funding we're receiving from you is quite critical. One of our services is through a group called Facility Services, where we employ right around 200 people, with some of whom with very severe disabilities. And through this help, we're able to get those folks strong employment and also provide all the assistance they need to be very productive in and on their work sites. So I want to conclude by saying thank you for all the support we received in the past and really encourage you to look at this additional funding request for the future. Thank you very much. And if I can answer any questions, I'd be glad to do so.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It does sound like you're off to a roaring start. Appreciate it. That is our last speaker that is signed up. Is there anyone else in the room that was not here for the sign up or that's been inspired to share something with us during this time? Well, if not, then I thank you each for all of the work that you do throughout Georgia and for the people, the precious people that you work with. This will conclude today's meeting, and we will begin going to work on some of these requests that you have made today. Thank you.